Welcome back. This second tutorial takes you through replicating the paper diagram, and all it is just showing you how to use simple text. Now, one of the big things for Illustrator is it is used to make illustrations and diagrams. And one of those things is being able to just make a simple diagram, put text in, make it look enhancing, make it look interesting, and simplifying information. So over here we have our little t, which stands for our text, so we can click on that. And there's also text sort of toolbars and panels over here. The character and the paragraph are the most important. But what I'm going to do is just draw a very simple text box. Now you can see in our diagram we've got the size of each piece of paper overriding it there. So what we need to do is just type one of those in. So if I just Shift A and 2, we've got A2. Now you can't see that, it's very, very small. So what we need to do is make that a lot larger, and you'll see even then that's not exactly very big. So I'm just going to crank this up to, say, maybe 150, and we have our letter A2 there. Probably even go a little bit bigger. Put him up to 250. So you can see we've got A2, maybe 200. And you can see how that's changing the point size. Now we want to bring the box in nice and close, so when we're trying to select things later it doesn't cause problems because you're selecting the wrong box. So you can see that that's there and that's A2. So we've written that in. We can again create another text box, or we could copy and paste this text box if we want to make our lives easier. Up the top is the type of font and then the font style, so just like Microsoft Word. So what I'm going to do is just, pick one. Let's just go with Century Gothic here, so you can see that that's popped that in. So I've got A2 now over here, so we'll zoom in a little bit so you can see some of these features. What we can do up here is we can double click to select our text. We can make it bold and italic. We can just have it in bold, we can just have it in italic, or we can just have it in regular as well. And I'll just bring that little box in, so that's A2. Another thing we can do is we can change the color, so you can see up there that it's black, and we want to double select our text, so double click, and then we've got our little black box. We can go over to our little color guide up the top here, and we can choose what color we would like to use. So we can choose that, and you can also use these little sliders. So you see the blue box, it's going to make it lighter. I can make it more of a greeny color, and then I can click off there. So you can see that that's how that's sitting there. So it says that that's an A2 box. What we can also do is add a stroke to it. So remember, the stroke is what we refer to as the outline. So we click it so it comes to the foreground, and now here you can see that, well, it doesn't have a stroke, it's got that put through it, but now whatever color I choose, it's going to create a bit of an outline. So whether I want to try and use a color that matches the text or something totally different. So at the moment it's green text with purple stroke on a pink sort of background. Then what you can do is thicken up that stroke in terms of points, and so we can, if I do a big one, it will squash our text and it will lose it, as you can see there, but it kind of looks cool, so you can see that it's got a nice thick stroke on it. But if I bring that stroke back, you can see how that's a very little stroke, a nice thick stroke. So if I put that on 3, take it back up here to my color panel, and what I can do is choose something probably a bit darker to make it stand out a little bit more, like a nice sort of dark, deep purpley colour. Well, that's a bit lighter. Go a bit darker. And you can see that that's helping make my letter stand out there. So you can just click on it again, change my stroke up, maybe a little bit thicker. So you can see how I've simply created that onto that diagram, and that's for A2. So I could then copy, paste, and move that over here, double click on my letter, change that to, try to think what size this guy needs to be. That's the A4, so that's our original. And then I could copy and paste him and bring him down to here. Remembering that when we hold spacebar we can pan and move around, and we can zoom in and zoom out. And if I wanted to, I'd bring up my rulers, Control R, and then bring back by control semicolon, I think it is, and try and find that halfway mark. So if I wanted to move my actual guide and move him over and create a new guide that sits right in the middle there, I can then use my text. I know it's a bit hard to see with a couple of lines now, but I can see how just using the keyboard or holding down shift you can actually move things over at a quicker rate. So try that, holding shift, moving it over, and I would line up the center of my text box with the center of this line here, because I know that comes down the center of the purple box. Press the control colon and you can see that A4 is nice and snug in the middle as well. Now another thing you can do if you have a tight text box and selecting is just moving it manually using your eye, so you can sort of pop it up and down and go, well, I can see that over here this black line is halfway, so I just want to lower that a little bit and move it a bit to the right, and you can see that I can start to position them. And this one down here just needs to turn into a 3. Again, I can change them individually and go through on my colors and change from the green to a yellow color, and I can change this one up here to a lighter blue, so you can see how that works. So that's what you need to do, is make this look a little bit more interesting and go around and change that. Now the next thing we need to do is pop down the information so people know what sizes are used for what. So then we go down, we have this information here. I'll just put maybe 2 or 3 of them just so you can understand how a basic paragraph works in Illustrator. So what we've got is a text box, and in our text box what we're going to do is change the size because it's rather large. We'll bring it down, and I'm just going to put caps lock on, write the word format, then I'm going to press tab. I'll just tab it across a couple times to line it up. So we're going to sort of have 2 columns within the one text box, and then we're going to have millimeters like this. Then when we press enter, brings it down a line. I'm then going to have A0, so shift A0, tab across to that same spot so it's in line. Then I'm going to type 841 by 1189. Then the next one, A1, shift A1, tab across, and type in 594 by 841. And down, A2, 420 by 594. Now, as you can see, that one doesn't line up, so what we need to do is, that was just not pressing the tab long enough. The tab will bring things across in short increments so it lines up. So they're all on the same line now, and what we would need to do to make it look a bit better than over here is perhaps over here the format and the millimeters we would put into bold. So you can see that I've made that nice and bold. Now over here we've touched, we haven't actually touched too much on this, but we're going to look at the character and the paragraph bar. So in a text box there's a number of different things you can do. One of the things you can do, so if I select this text here, is we can space out our letters. So you can see this little guy here, this is what we call the tracking. If I want to space the letters or bring them closer together, watch how that's obviously moved our tab across, but I've been able to space out the space between individual letters. That's what we call tracking. And you can also see that we can bring it nice and close so the letters are, almost touching each other. So it always usually sets itself at 0. You can do it minus, or you can set it more. Each typeface, so every text is different, has a different 0 because they want it to look a different sort of style. So you need to have a go at adjusting those. Now the next one is in here, so the spacing between our lines. So you'll notice that they're all on what we call 72, which is just set at auto, because that knows, well, that's what you're meant to do, to have that space set. But if I want to again bring it closer, so they're all nice and close, notice how they came together, it bunches it all up. So you might want to have that as, you know, a design feature. You might want to space it out heaps more. So if I say 100 points, you can see how we're giving ourselves a nice amount of space. Now everyone thinks text is quite boring and quite simple, but it's actually quite amazing, you know, just how much you can put into it. There are people that have jobs called typographers that just, you know, spend hours and hours on creating fonts and making them look just right and getting into quite amount of detail about the spacing. So that's just some of the basics for you guys to be able to understand. Now, to make this, you know, perhaps look a little more interesting, we could just create a straight line and give it a bit of a stroke, a black stroke, thicken it up like so, and just pop that in, you know, wherever you sort of see that it should go and feel like it's going to work. And you can create, you know, a box around the outside with a stroke on it as well to neaten it up. But the idea is that you guys, for your blog, are going to replicate this diagram here, put all the letters in, demonstrate to me that you know how to use the basic features of Illustrator. You can have the text on the side, you can have it below like it's in the diagram. I also would like a bit of a heading, so a nice big large font for the heading to help aid in your diagram. And I also need you to write in this information so that as you go through you can remember, okay, A4, I understand that's used for magazines and letters and photocopies. A5, what's that used for? A6, and so on. So you'll get used to it, because when we send things to printers, it's very important we know the correct sizing that they're after. So you need to replicate that diagram as best as you can. You can be unique and creative as well, as you can see I've done so there. Once you've done that, make sure you save your work, and this is the last tutorial for this activity.